How did you tell your spouse it was over? Via Skype. 24 hours after my sons and I landed in Miami. Her. Where are you? Me. We're in the United States of America. Her. Ah! The moment was priceless. Then ensued the threats, screaming, tears, etc. But except for the legal details, it was done. Background. Was living in Eastern Europe as an American expat married to a local woman. Ex was assaulting my elder of 2 sons who had just turned 5. It was pretty bad stuff. When I wasn't around, she took her frustrations with me out on my 5-year-old miniature carbon copy. He was an exact little version of me. Looks, personality, everything. But physically unable to defend himself from the tyrant she had become. Unable to break me through threats and tirades, she turned her attention to my mini-me and was determined to break the me in him. Besides beating and locking the kid in closets to try to accomplish this, she burned him with an iron on several occasions. She claimed it was accidental each time. She locked him out on the balcony in sub-zero temperatures, causing the little guy to contract chronic bronchitis. Seeing my emaciated boy with bruises, welts, burns, and dark circles under his eyes made me realize I had to get him out of the situation at any cost. To hell with any business or life I had built there. Nothing was worth what was happening to my child, but I was far from home and had to do this thing right. Hold tight, little buddy. Daddy's got this. Having gone to the local police previously, I knew they really couldn't care less. They offered to interview my ex, but said making an arrest would be difficult without witnesses or a direct admission of guilt. An attorney later said I was fortunate they didn't investigate or she would have likely gotten a talking to at most. Denied everything, and probably moved out with the children, filing for divorce with counterclaims. Everything would thereafter be on her turf and terms. I consulted a few local family attorneys about getting custody. A local attorney advised that men there don't get custody, much less a foreigner and especially an American. A man never stands a prayer unless a woman were deemed medically incapacitated, a substance addict, convicted prostitute, or deviant. An expert on international family law in New York explained it was a tender year state, not a best interest of the child state. Simply put, a woman could be an alcoholic beach, beating the kids in a cockroach-infested tenement, and you could be George Soros the philanthropist and she'd still keep them. The best a man could hope for was visitation, which would be difficult to enforce if she decided not to honor it. What about the assault? She'd deny it and make something up to vilify me, likely bringing others to support her herstory. She might even reverse the situation and have charges filed against me. There was little hope of getting any legal remedy as an expat father. The advice from local attorneys was to get my kids out of the country to the US. It was a ray of hope, but far from simple. Albeit our only fighting chance, getting small children across the border as an American would be difficult. I would need falsified travel consent documents that could pass through exit controls and electronic verification, especially if she'd put a knee exceed order in place. Cost a bundle for those docs, worth every penny. All would need to be done without arousing suspicion from my wife or mother-in-law, whom she moved in without my approval a year earlier. Any mention of it would trigger a fight. I knew I'd have one chance only. If my plan failed or I was caught leaving, it could mean never seeing my kids again and facing prison time. Not to mention the life my children would have if I weren't around to protect them. So 6 months of elaborate planning and letting her think she had me over a barrel is what it took. I grinned and bore every provocation knowing the day of reckoning was coming. I worked out every detail to minimize risks. Failure was unacceptable. However, there's no such thing as a fail-safe plan. Something can always go wrong. You can only reduce, never eliminate risk. Then just 2 months before our planned departure, she upped the ante. She threatened to take the kids and leave unless I sold my house in the States and bought a mutual residence. The intentions were crystal clear. Years before, I considered purchasing property for us, but as she showed her true colors, I sensed I'd get fleeced. I continued renting to ensure she couldn't get more than the last month's rent should things go south. When mother-in-law started coaching her, I had to play it cool and drag things out. Fearing she might leave with the kids first, I dangled a carrot. Pretending to acquiesce, I told her to find a good realtor as long as she promised to ease up on our son. That would get him some slack while she was on her best behavior. I said once we co-owned property, our relationship would improve. Hook, line, and sinker. She and mother-in-law were ecstatic, thinking I'd caved. What they didn't appreciate was they weren't dealing with a pussy-whipped American exposing a soft underbelly, just some smoke and mirrors before the ball dropped. D-Day approached. I stared at the border crossing with mounting anxiety, my heart pounding in the dark night. Although all of my paperwork was in order, having rehearsed many possible scenarios over and again, lines of questioning and answers prepped, outwardly appearing cool, calm, and collected, my insides were like a bowl of jello on a roller coaster, thinking about possible stones left unturned. Deep breath. Following a visual scan of all of the customs agents, I chose a young woman mid to late 20s whom I spotted waving goodbye and smiling to a family leaving with small children. Perfect.